it's kind of like my go-to page. It's actually made, it's on the website Earthbound Central, which is kind of, it's made by one of the guys who founded the site that I am a staff member on.
Okay.
And so one of the really, like, it's kind of the go-to informational source about these cards.
Okay.
And that's where I got the pictures that I sent to you of the other ones.
Right.
But there's one cart that I had totally been looking, like, I totally looked over it and didn't really pay much attention.
Mm-hmm.
It was one that was sold in 2009 by a guy named Matt Alderman, who I guess worked as a game counselor.
Yeah, I remember that name.
Yeah. And so he, I guess, had been...
So he actually had balls enough to sell a
I guess.
prototype cartridge?
Well, I guess. He tried to sell it on eBay, and then his account was flagged by a bunch of people, because that's how eBay works.
And Nintendo is one of them that would flag it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because at one point, and I'm sure that they still are that way, they have somebody that scans for that kind of stuff all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there have been, there was a Nintendo World Championship cart that just recently, the $100,000 bid that was supposedly placed by their 2-year-old, which it was essentially them being like, hey, let's spend a bunch of money and not, end up actually buying it just to mess with the whole sale. eBay has a tendency to be that way. But he sold it, I guess, offline. And one of the interesting things it says on the site, and I can actually show you the picture of the cart he had, although I'm sure if you know, if you recognize the name, that it probably is legitimate. He had a picture of the internal board, and it looks more like that. So...
Right, this is pretty much,
I mean, it's not the best picture in the world.
So you see how these sockets are right here? All you have to do is take a screwdriver, you push it under there on one side, push it under the other side. The ROM comes out of there. You put it into a programmer. Well, first you'd have to put it into an eraser.
Yeah.
Which uses ultraviolet light, which is why they have those little windows right there.
Yeah, and that's why you would put the labels.
Right. I mean, they're not that sensitive that, that they're going to erase just from being exposed, but it does take a pretty hefty dose of UV to erase those things.
Cool.
But then the ordinary thing would be that the technician that prepared the ROM would then prepare a label, because sometimes they'd be preparing lots of them, either of a single copy if it was necessary, or depending on what the use was, they might be preparing 8, 10, a dozen copies at a time. So they put the labels on there so you knew which one was program 1, program 2, character 1, character 2, etc.
Yeah.
And then they'd fill up they push them down into the sockets.
Huh. That's really interesting. So, yeah, I guess it clears that up about that one, but one of the things that the reason that I asked about that was because it actually says, in the descriptions about the different boards, one of the things that it said about that one in particular is that it did have sockets, and that the EPROMs were actually a different manufacturer than...
Oh, we got lots of different manufacturers.
Yeah, but I mean, it seemed, it just seemed interesting because I know you had talked about it on the email, and so I mean, if these ones don't, if they're not socketed like that, that's the other one that I was looking at.
Right, that's the one with Earthbound printed on the labels, which is highly inconsistent with the prototypes that we used.
Yeah.
Because we never had that kind of volume that they bothered printing them on the labels like that.
Yeah.
They'd be handwritten.
Yeah. And I've been,
So which tells me that, you know, there could be somebody, I mean, because once you have the program, and if you have the equipment to program EPROMs, you can print, you could copy one, you could copy 1,000.
yeah, that's
And
really,
the boards were not that scarce,
yeah,
because all the licensees around the world could purchase them through Nintendo.
yeah. Cool. Well, that definitely clears a lot up about it. I know that there's one of those 2 carts that had the printed labels on them. He actually went to the extent of like making a video showing the inside, because I don't think he knows, because he bought it. The story behind those 2 is weird, because they were bought in a supposedly found in a garage sale of a former Nintendo employee, which seems kind of sketch on its own, but and then the reason that I sent it in the first place was because one of the people on the team that had dumped the ROM off of the Canada cart, I guess, he said something along the lines of, they asked the guy who discovered them for proof, like by sending a ROM, because he had the ability to dump ROMs himself. And supposedly he dumped a ROM that was already modified to work with emulators by the team that had been working on it. So that he essentially sent them their own ROM, I guess. Which, you know, it was just on a thread in our forums that ended up like just kind of falling into the background, because it just kind of died off. But that's, I mean, considering that one of the guys who owns the 2 that now obviously seem like they're more of a reproduction at this point, I mean, he's been offered, I think, like 5-figure offers for this thing. So I figured we might want to figure that out instead of him selling it only to find that it is a fake. Yeah, so awesome.
Well, it wouldn't, you know, just like, you know, a digital copy of a song, you know, it's still going to be the same, but it wasn't, in my opinion, probably wasn't something that originated at NOA.
Cool. That's good.
And then without the, you know, the record, you know, the ability to dump that out and check it against the, you know, what they call the checksums, which is the way that, one of the ways they identify whether it's programmed correctly. I wouldn't have any idea what, you know, what the origin was. Whether it was, you know, something that came from NOA and then was copied and then made copies thereof, or whether it was something, you know, a copy of one that went out, got dumped, modified in some way, and then reprogrammed on the silicon.
Okay, so I guess moving off of that topic, I actually kind of there are a lot of questions, I guess. Okay. Because I mean, this has been definitely a topic which, for you, it probably will seem kind of weird.
It's all seemed very surreal, very abstract. Yeah. Something that I never would have predicted.
Yeah. I think looking on the site, I actually checked just to see, just kind of an interest check on my, like, the site that I come from. Apparently has something like 40,000 members on it that at least at some point were active, which is really, so I mean, it's this series as a whole has a huge fan base.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, I played the game, worked on the game from a translation that went, you know, an initial translation just to get the feel of the game, to actually having nothing coming up when the message boxes would come up other than line numbers. Yeah. So this is text line number such, you know, and You saw nothing.
Yeah. It's like, where are the words?
Well, I knew that they would be coming.
Yeah.
You know. So I just had to, look and see what was on there and do a comparison. Is the translation I'm doing, does it look like it's going to fit? And then, there were rounds and rounds and rounds of pushing things through, and then you actually get to see it in the window at the time.
Yeah.
And then go back and make corrections to make things appropriate to the scenario. It was a really interesting process.
Yeah. So
Kept me busy for months.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, how long was the time that you had to work on this game? Like, I mean, from like a start point to an end point, I guess.
Probably about 4 months. Could have been longer. I don't recall exactly.
Yeah.
But I know it was probably at least 3 months.
Cool. So the cart says, like the one that I've been tracking says that it was sent to Nintendo of Canada in like early '94, like February of '94. So was it? So it was probably.
Well,
from,
we'd finished everything, and it had been sitting in the can, just waiting to be produced, and then you probably read the stories on the web about it. Some of it is not quite exactly accurate, because somebody somebody plagiarized somebody else's article and wrote their own stuff and started interjecting their own meanings onto things.
So like a game of telephone, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, just basically the simple thing that happened was we finished the game. It was supposed to come out. I think it was supposed to be out Father's Day weekend. What year, I don't remember. And they knew that, okay, we'll put so much money behind it and do this advertising and whatever, and then the Super NES was lurking. They'd already finished the hardware in Japan at this point. But they, at the executive levels, they decided to move up the introduction of the Super NES from whenever it was to farther up into the summer. And they felt that the amount of money that they felt that they needed to put behind this game to support it, they didn't think they were going to have a large enough window to sell as many as they wanted to get the amount of money that they wanted to make.
Before the Super Nintendo.
Right, and so the Super NES came along, and it was like that's where the resources went, because they felt they were going to make more money off of releasing the Super NES quicker than releasing this game at all.
Yeah.
Even though they'd already put money into the development.
Yeah, I mean when
they
you
just hadn't done any production yet.
Yeah, when you're releasing a whole new system, I figure it's probably going to take precedence over a game.
A single game, yeah. Unless the game was, something that was going to extend the life of that system. It was going to possibly make you sell more more units of the system it plays on, or whatever. Like Donkey Kong Country would be the good parallel. That came along and extended the life of the Super NES beyond when it would have been replaced.
Yeah. So I know that you said this in your email. The one that you had sent to Nintendo of Canada wasn't in fact a final version, but
no, it wasn't
like
the final version.
And that was that so that you could track it, like if it was released, you could figure out where it was, or like?
Yeah, possibly. There were lots of reasons why that was done. There was, as I recall, there was no reason to send them the exact final version.
Yeah.
Because what they were doing was an evaluation on whether they wanted to produce that game as a Canada-only release.
Yeah.
But they knew that there was going to have to be a French translation involved, because somehow there was if I recall, it might have been that they were just going to do a translation of the user guide, and then they were going to go ahead and sell it as an English-only cartridge, but they wanted to evaluate it, and see if that's what they wanted to do, and so there was no reason to send them the production version, they didn't get it.
Yeah. Cool. So I guess that this is I guess from there were there like things from the like I know that you said that there were like bug fixes and stuff like that.
Bug fixes, text incorrections. Even so, when we got done, went back and flagged the printed book of the screen text, which was about that big. It had post-it notes stuck,
It's like
hundreds of them.
All the stuff that you missed during that, or like?
Well, it was either stuff that if we'd had the chance to go back and make these little tweaks, it would have been a little bit better, or typos, things that were just incorrect.
Yeah.
And with production like this, there comes a time when you just have to say, that's it.
Yeah.
It's got to go. It's going to go like it is, which is why, people, howl about seeing inconsistencies in movies.
Yeah.
It's like they could film for the next 5 years and still not have any errors in a movie once they edit it and put it all together. There just comes a point when you say, this is good enough, off it goes.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where it was. And especially with the Mother game, there were lots of different interests other than just Nintendo.
Yeah.
There were other companies that were, actually doing some of the coding and the whole bit. So you only want to be paying these people for so long.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I mean, I'm sure that even looking now and seeing things like there are some games now that are released that even in Japan have like almost game-breaking bugs nowadays when they like Skyward Sword, for example. There's a way that you can actually there's three different like events that you can go to at different orders, and if you go to it in a certain order, it'll end up like messing up your entire game. So they ended up having to create an entire Wii channel to fix that. So I mean, finding a perfect game isn't something that's easy.
No, not when there's that many millions of lines of code.
Yeah.
And we always had a saying that fixing bugs causes bugs. So sometimes it's better to not mess with it.
Yeah, I think there was actually one that I'm sure was in the Japanese version as well, but I think it's after Eve. After Eve goes up the mountain to die, I guess. The robot.
Okay.
There was a way of being able to go up and fight the final boss without actually getting the final melody, or something like that, which I thought was really interesting. That was actually first, I think, found out by the guy who owns the cartridge, that owns the cartridge. So that, there's always going to be something.
Yeah, there is.
So I guess on a different track of thinking, I actually asked a couple, if some of the people who are on the planning board had any questions to ask you, and I know that I'm sure that you talked about this at some point in some of your other the other articles on it, but the differences between the town names in versus the Japanese, what the direct translation would be versus what ended up happening.
Right.
So
why is there a difference?
Yeah.
Because we wanted to produce a game that would be, we hope to be more appealing to a broad base of Americans, and wanted something that was going to be appealing to all ages.
Yeah.
It was kind of felt that, the Easter and Halloween, and while they were fun, it might turn off some of the older players,
Yeah.
and wouldn't be, and we wanted something that was appropriate to and wouldn't have wouldn't be unappealing to older players or younger players.
Yeah. And I honestly, I think that those, actually the person that asked was asking because not because of the why'd you change it, but actually they found that having the names, especially things like Spokane and stuff like that, where it's named after other kind of playing on the theme of the city and
little puns, little inside jokes when they're possible.
Yeah, they definitely thought that was they actually and myself included, think that those names were actually a really good design choice. And it's interesting because you kind of see the same thing happen in the Super Nintendo version with those names. And I don't know if that's, I think they actually did that in the Japanese Mother 2, I think. I don't remember the exact translation.
Yeah, somebody else did the localization on that game, so
yeah,
you can see why there's, as well as it's a different story. It was kind of supposed to be a parallel universe story, not a continuation, so he had different ideas.
And it was definitely cool to see those kinds of having those sort of puns and things, because they even did that in the Japanese version of puns based on the theme of the city, or I think they had number based, the cities were number based, and then from there they made it sound like a real city. So Tucson, or stuff like that. So it was that was really cool to see. So, I mean, was this had you worked on other games in the capacity that you had worked on this one?
For Mother?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did Final Fantasy.
Oh, wow.
The original NES Final Fantasy.
Huh. Cool.
Which was a Nintendo release, not a Square release. It was Square's program, but we had the rights to and sold it in the United States.
Cool.
And so Mother was pretty much right on the heels of finishing up Final Fantasy. Then we started working on Mother instead.
Cool. And I think I saw something online about Tetris Attack. Did you work on Tetris Attack?
Yes.
Cool.
And that was a rebranding of another Japanese game called Panel de Pong.
Yes.
Which had a whole different set of characters, those fairy characters, and somebody at a high level said, "Oh, we can never sell those fairy characters here. Just put Yoshi characters in it."
Yeah, kind of in the same way that they would say, "Oh, Super Mario Bros. 2 is going to be too hard for American gamers," which actually was really cool. But yeah,
I never thought it would be too hard.
Yeah, which is probably why they released it here now, because
eventually
they were
they got off their idea that. I guess they knew that Americans can't play games.
Well, considering the level that I play games at, I don't know. I definitely think that there's a lot, there are probably a lot of people that are better than me at games, but yeah.
Oh, even when I was good, there were a lot of people a lot better than I.
Yeah. It seems very rare to be ever the best at a game. So I've kind of become content in my knowledge.
No, I knew I'm never going to beat everybody, but I also there came a point when I stopped playing against other people because it's no fun.
Yeah.
Because either you're so much better than they are, and then they say, well, it's unfair because all you do is play games. you know, and then there's the other people that, you know, they have natural abilities, or they've just honed their abilities so well, and then they're, ha ha ha, I beat you, you do nothing but play games, and I can beat you. It's no fun when, you know, when that comes into the mix.
Yeah. So I figure you're a gamer too, like on a enjoyment level.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I played games, video games from the time that they first came out. I mean, I was there, and when they wheeled in the Pong for the first time at the bowling alley where we'd been playing pinball.
Yeah.
And they set it up, and there was Pong. We'd never seen anything like that at all, you know. And so I'd been playing video games and enjoying it since then.
Yeah. So
You have to forgive my laryngitis. I'm just getting over a cold, and
oh yeah, me too. There's something.
Everybody.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna keep sipping my tea and hope that my voice holds out.
Yeah. So, I guess on a more personal note, what would be your favorite game then? Like if you had to choose.
If I had to still choose a game, if I could still just had a quarter in my pocket and wanted to play any game, I'd still play Stargate.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't actually played Stargate, but I've definitely heard.
Not any of the remakes that they made. The Defender 2 Stargate. That kind of dates me.
Well, yeah. I mean, I honestly grew up in the Nintendo 64 age, I guess, and yeah, it's kind of weird thinking that, like, I mean, because I hang out with a lot of people who were, you know, playing games back when the NES was, you know, the real deal.
In its heyday.
Yeah, and they always talk about, like, you know, back in my day we used to play Galaga in the arcade and stuff like that. But yeah, so I guess from that perspective it's weird because I was two when Ocarina of Time came out, and that,
two?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. That was I think one of the first games I ever really like played as a kid was Ocarina of Time. So, but I think that one of my favorite games has to be Pokemon Blue, just because that was the first game that I beat, and I'm proud to say that I beat it before I could read.
Which just goes to prove, you know, as much effort as you can put into trying to make a screen text script as good as it is and everything, it's still the action that you get, the interaction you do. That's what really matters. You know, I mean, the story can really help things out, but the mechanics, just the formula of that sort of a game, the story can help it out, but if it's not there and you're not able to just figure it out that way, it's not going to be a good game.
Yeah.
You know, which is why, you know, I was playing Final Fantasy and Mother and making my way through it. When I don't read Japanese, all I knew is what I had to do and do this and okay, and this spell did this and okay. Yeah. And I succeeded at it, you know.
Yeah, I just recently modded my Super Nintendo to play Famicom, like Super Famicom games. So I got Final Fantasy 4, 5, and 6, and I've been taking Japanese for the past 2 terms in school, but yeah, like it's fun almost to just kind of, you know, struggle your way through.
Oh yeah. So I got to do that and get paid for it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's
that was kind of sweet.
So how many people were working on the project? Because it sounded like you seem to be a jack of all trades in terms of what you did while working on it.
Well, in terms of localization, I did, for the most part, somebody else did the translation.
Yeah.
And then I took the translation and rewrote it. It got sent off to Japan. They put it into the game. It came back. Went through it. Like this, don't fix this. This wasn't put in correctly, whatever.
Yeah.
Sent it back. And then we had other people that would play it as well and check over things, that I put in and go back and check through the corrections but our side of things is pretty small, as well as in Japan. There were probably only a couple of people working on it at that point for the localization. I don't know how many people worked on it, during the original production for Japan, but
cool. So did you? Because I know that there's a lot of like I guess not as much in Mother as there was in Mother 2. There were like some sprite editing and things like that like had to happen, like the smoking bird and things like that. Were those things that you worked on? Like, were you a part of that process?
Yes.
As well? So.
Well, we had a set of guidelines that this was predated the ESRB and any game rating.
Yeah.
And Nintendo had a set of guidelines that we gave to the third-party people, we called licensees, as well as it was expected that we abide by those for our own releases, and that was part of all the people that did localization. We watched through that, and there was no direct references to religion.
Yes.
No smoking, because by that time, I think it was California had already put into law that any game that had smoking in it wasn't going to be sold in California.
Oh, yeah.
So
California, I mean, if you're going to have a game that can't be sold in California, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's changed any now, but it's changed a lot in this country since those days, but smoking is no longer really acceptable.
Oh yeah.
Where you look back at movies from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and pardon me, smoking was absolutely casual. They're walking around, with a cigarette, smoking, and the whole time, and then it came into disfashion in this country, but even then, when it was not fashionable in this country, it was still okay in Japan.
Yeah.
And that was the thing, is the Japanese realized that just because this game character is smoking, it's his character is smoking. It's not somebody trying to put forth an agenda saying smoking is okay or cool. It was just a part of the character, and they get this within their culture, where in this country the culture is, I need to prevent something else from happening because it would be bad.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And if people would back off a little bit from that and let, and not worry so much about what their neighbor is doing or what their neighbor's neighbor how their neighbor's neighbor might be influencing their neighbor.
Yeah.
People would be a lot happier, I think.
Yeah. Well, I know that definitely back in the 30s and 40s, they didn't really know how bad for you it is.
Yeah. Well, they knew it wasn't good for you.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
They wondered why people were dropping like flies.
Yeah. And although I definitely saw a whole lot more of it in the Super Nintendo game, although that had a lot more like copyright things, like the Blues Brothers and having to take the Red Cross logos off of hospitals and things like that. But I mean,
Yeah,
they're-
well, I was busy on another game when that one was done, so I don't know.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, yes. I guess I figure this is more of a question to wrap up with. I guess. I remember you saying in your email, and honestly, the only reason I'm asking this is because of for these people, and that's the, and that's that. There, you said something about the day that you left NOA having at least something about the final version of.
Oh, there were at least 2 copies of the final version sitting in my desk.
The day that you.
ROM copies, the last version that we had, because I'd played it, from even after I'd finished the game, I'd still sometimes go back and play it a couple times through, because I still enjoyed the story.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the mechanics of it. There was, over the years I've kind of read a few things where people say, oh, it was too much of a grinder, It's like, okay, if you want to have everything handed to you, then fine. But going through and earning the money and going through and upping your experience was a part of that game.
Yeah.
And so what if this monster wipe you out and you have to go back?
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah, definitely.
And having that happen to you, and sometimes unpredictably, in that game, I think was part of the lure of it.
Yeah.
Because I've gone from this town to this town, and all of a sudden, this monster that I've never seen before comes out and just boom, we're all done, toast, and it's like, oh my God. And then you go back through, and you don't see that thing again. You go back, and I probably trampled down those paths hundreds of times.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I'm sure that people loved the addition of the dash function in Earthbound Zero.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because it was something they put in for debug, and they were, as we were finishing things up, and they said, okay, to get to the final version, we're going to do this, this, and this. And one of the things was we're going to remove the debug. I said, leave it in. Leave it in.
Yeah.
So, when I played it before, during the initial runs through, and then once that debug menu was put in there, it was just like, no, this is a feature.
This is the best thing. Yeah. I mean, I know that, especially now, there's a lot of RPGs. Back when that game was kind of, in development, I guess that wasn't really a function. But now, if you look at Pokemon, ever since I think Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire versions, they've started, which is 2003-ish. They started adding in those dash functions and making it easier to move around, and people loved it, and they've kept it So I mean, it's really awesome to see a game, especially from the NES that has that kind of seemed to beat everybody else.
See, I'd played Dragon Warrior, which we were playing in Japanese before then as well, which was like plod, 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 plod. A slime appears, and it's like, the pace of that game was just so much slower. Yeah. And so, and I think it definitely was, everybody seems to be in agreement that, you're still going to get hit by the same amount of enemies, but there's something in your mind that says, oh, I'm moving so fast. It just makes it just a little more tolerable.
Yeah, Yeah, I definitely think that, I mean, yeah, that's definitely an addition that I enjoyed. And I think that, because I mean, especially if you have to backtrack and things like that, where you've gone through an area once and you're like, oh, crap, I died and I didn't, go and sleep at an inn at all, and so now I have to start back and go all the way back, and just having to trot along at one speed just feels so just like, I mean, it feels like a pain. So even if you're going across, like, the same, random encounter chance happening, but just at a faster speed, does actually make me feel better about it. Because at least I'm cutting down the walking.
Yeah.
So.
Or at least your perception.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what, so much of the game is about, is, what you perceive, because it's all just, lines of code, somebody, making this stuff up, and it's not real. But if they do a good enough story or job on the story to make a story that you have empathy with, you feel good about, you care for the characters, you don't want them to. That's like one of the things that we, I think it was Fire Emblem. There's a character in there that has to die.
Yeah.
And I was talking with somebody in, one of the people on one of the R&D teams about it, and it's like, people hate that. We literally had people that were, evaluating that game, and they were upset that they had to lose one of their characters. Yeah. And that there was just no way around it, and they went back to the save, and they tried, and they tried, and they tried over again, and because they developed an empathy, because they've done such a good job of character development that made people care for these characters.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And so, like, I feel like that some of the same, like, I think that's part of why I like Earthbound, or like Mother, I guess, so much, is just because of the fact that it makes you, even if none of your main characters hardly talk at all, like Nintendo doesn't speak like the whole game.
Mm-hmm. Well, because he's supposed to be you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, definitely. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of a given, but like there's not much dialogue between the main characters, but you spend so much time with them that when Teddy gets injured and ends up having to, you have to like leave him behind essentially. Yeah. And when Eve dies, you're just like, no. And it's. I mean, well, the original story that Itoy wrote, it's all right there. He's the guy that came up with the concepts that all I did was try to make them appealing to Americans. And I'm sure that it's probably not as appealing to what would be today's American audience as to what I perceived to be the American audience that was going to see it at the time that I wrote it. But I mean, if I had one of my old copies, I'd probably still pull it out from time to time and play it. Yeah, definitely.
But I don't have any.
Yeah. I mean,
I wished I had. From what you tell me on how much you can make on, on sale of the cartridges, but even if I had it, I never would sell it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
If I had 5 copies, I still wouldn't sell it.
Yeah.
Because Nintendo was a really great place to work for me, and I wouldn't do anything to put a wedge in my relationship with the company, because the people that I worked with and for, top notch,
Yeah. Cool. Well, it's definitely been quite quite the interesting discussion. Like, I honestly, this is something that on a personal level, you know, this started out as an event that we were like, oh, 25 years of Mother. Just talking to one of my friends who does the event scheduling, it was like, hey, we should do a big event to celebrate, you know. And there had been, this I think for the site is one of the biggest events that we've ever had, because not only is it something this large scale, but it's something that normally we have it run by Fangamer, which is a clothing store basically that is run by the people who started up the site.
Okay.
And so they would generally run the events themselves and stuff, paying for things and making sure that all of this kind of comes together. It was stuff that we didn't even know about until like right before it started. But this is something that has been definitely when I talk to the events guy, he doesn't work for Fangamer, and so we were just like, hey, let's ask Fangamer if we can get something like this started. And they talked, and they told us essentially we'd love to, but we're kind of busy, but we'll let you do it yourselves. And so this is really big for the site, and I honestly never thought that I'd end up getting to this point, you know, like just. It's really interesting playing a game and, you know, scrolling through the credits and seeing you show up as like English scriptwriter on there and stuff like that. And then to look at that and finally, you know, after a month or two of planning, be actually sitting with you having this discussion is just mind-blowing. So.
Well, I'm flattered. I mean, to me, it's like, it's odd that the game has become such a cult classic.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think I wished it would have been produced and sold. I think it wouldn't have just been a cult classic. I think that a lot of people would have got it, enjoyed it, and you know the RPG genre would have grown much sooner, you know, in this country. But I mean, look at it now. I mean, people love that sort of game.
Oh yeah.
And you know, and there was the initial feeling that Americans aren't going to like this because it's not football or baseball.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I think one of the things that makes it so great, and I think one of the reasons that it probably would have sold pretty well had it been released, you know. And I think that's because it was, in a way, it was like one of the first real like modern day RPGs, I guess.
Well, because all the RPGs that everybody had played up to that point, you know, it was all based on fantasy or you know, medieval and it just it was different in that respect. And I'm out of, you know, playing games anymore. I just don't have time. But I know there's been, you know, a lot of games that have come out with themes that are other than just, you know, medieval, knights, armor, and, you know, that sort of thing.
Definitely looking back, this game was, I mean, had it been released, it probably people would have viewed RPGs differently.
Well, I mean, it was a science fiction themed game, you know, which you wouldn't have thought so when you start playing it, you know, until you get to the end. You know, what was actually going on, you know, when all of a sudden you start seeing I wished I had the time to sit down and play it tonight. Refresh my memory on these things, because it's been now 10 years since,
it's
10
been,
maybe,
well, since
15, since I played it the last time.
Wow. Yeah, I mean,
but there are still elements that stick in my head.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that if I were to hear, I mean, because I actually got a copy of the Mother CD, which I'm sure that is quite common.
Oh yeah.
But when I got a copy of it, and it was a gift to me from Tanaka, of Tanaka fame from Nintendo.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, here, take this," and it was long enough ago that I didn't even have a portable CD player at the time. And I was in Japan at the time, and I went out and I bought a portable CD player. That was one of the things I listened to a couple of times during the flight back from Tokyo.
It's funny because we're actually one of the projects that we're working on as kind of like a bonus gift, I guess. I guess as a gift to the community is we're actually working on kind of like a cover album sort of thing, essentially.
Yeah, I think you've mentioned something about people doing covers of this stuff.
Yeah, we've got there are bands that there's actually a really popular kind of, I guess, concert tour, Warped Tour. And it goes all across the country, and essentially they pile it up with as many bands as they can fit, and then it's essentially a full day of different bands playing sets. And we've actually, it's grown so big that we've had people who, one of the bands is actually in that concert set, which is amazing that they've taken their time to work on it. They did the opening theme to the TV show The Goldbergs, as I found out recently, they've done, as far as gamer kind of, the gaming music kind of market is really small right now because it's still building, I guess. But in terms of bands, they're really big, and so this is going to be definitely an amazing thing, but we've been working on a cover album that we were thinking of sending, once we get it done and stuff like that, we were thinking of making a few essentially as prizes or other things. We would have kind of physical copies, but otherwise it would be digital. But if you wanted a copy, a physical copy, we'd be more than happy to send you the one. So.
Cool, I'll check it out.
Yeah. And we actually, I think one of the guys that's on it now, and I've been talking back and forth with him a lot because he's super cool. He actually did the music for the remastered version of DuckTales.
Okay.
And so, it's another instance of, sitting down thinking this was going to be an event that, I thought originally was going to be just on the site, but is now, I think it'll definitely...
It's going to grow until you say, we got to go with what we got.
Yeah. Yeah. So, either way, it's definitely going to be... It'll make history.
Yeah, you'll have to definitely send me a link and let me know when it goes live.
Yeah. The event will be, I think, the way that we're lining it up, because the event, I guess the release date would be, with time zone differences, would be the 26th of July here.
Okay.
And so I think that's when we're going to have the last one, the finale, so Fighting Gag, or however, how did you ever, pronounce that, the final boss?
I always called it Geeg.
Geeg, okay. That makes sense. That does make sense. I've heard it, because there, in the differences...
I didn't, I just, that was one that translation came in, it was like that, and I didn't see any need to make any changes, to make it any more appealing, change anything to come into compliance with the guidelines.
Yeah.
And, however people pronounce it, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm always really wary, especially when it comes to pronouncing, because I'll hear people like almost there's always the concept of saying something wrong and then everyone's like, you said it wrong, and so I'm always really wary of that. But
well, I think that's why I made a lot of the choices that I did on and some things to simplify, and if it came out where it was it wasn't obvious what exactly, then the interpretation that somebody came up with is good.
Yeah.
Not a big deal if they had a different thought than I did.
Yeah.
Because it's like reading a book. You get visions in your head. You read a good book, and the visions in your head of what is going on, how this person is speaking, and everything. They're yours. They're something that you've created in your head.
Yeah.
And a game like this does the same thing.
Yeah. And one of the things that I found really interesting is that as it turns out, I think Mewtwo from Pokemon was actually based off of Yig as a character.
Oh yeah.
Which I mean is hard because you have like a sprite like this big, like the battle sprite, and it's encapsulated in the kind of that.
Yeah, it's been so long. I'd have to see pictures.
Yeah, it's interesting just to see how much, even though it wasn't released, how much of an impact this game has actually had on people.
Oh,
so.
It's had tremendous impact. It just it tells me that the game would have been great.
Yeah.
And that people they would have sold copies of it regardless of when anything else was coming out. But the execs in charge felt that they knew, and I can't fault them in terms of what they felt was best for the company, what was going to give Nintendo the best return on their investments, because I would have done some things differently throughout all the years that I was there. The company made lots of money.
Yeah. Do you think that if it were, if the game were released, because I know that Virtual Console just back last July, something like that, last July, August, something like that, actually, they finally, after 7 years of, Starmen.Net kind of badgering them, released Earthbound onto the Super Nintendo onto the Virtual Console. Do you think it would be something that people would be a worthwhile investment for Nintendo, I guess? If they were to release it as Earthbound Zero or just, Mother on...
It's up to them.
Yeah.
I can't second guess any of their decisions.
Yeah.
And I don't know any of the people that are in charge of making those decisions anymore, really.
Yeah.
Well, not directly.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure that just from our community alone, it would get a lot of sales. But I mean, yeah. I mean, I get, yeah.
But I mean, I would, that's the one thing I always hated about my position was sometimes I had to be kind of schizophrenic in thinking that what's going to be the absolute best for this game, and also what is also good for business.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're in conflict, and so I still think both ways, and so I think I'd have to look and say, well, what would it take? Would it really be worth it?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to just say, just do it.
Yeah. I mean, if they ever do end up releasing it on the Virtual Console, and you happen to get I'm not sure if you like would go out and buy a Wii U to play it. Although I figure maybe from the sounds of it you might. But like,
I'd be happy playing it on NES.
Yeah.
On a real NES with a real controller, because somebody asked me to play an emulated version one time, and I looked at it on the computer and I was like, I can't control this right. I've got no interest.
Arrow keys? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't like playing things on emulators either. Like, that's actually why, because Earthbound for Super Nintendo is so gosh dang expensive. It's like, I think now it just seems like it keeps rising in price, which makes sense, I guess, because it's
getting rarer.
Yeah, but I think just for the cartridge itself, it's probably like over $100.
Huh.
Which is why I actually modded my Super Nintendo. So
I wish I would have bought 100 of them.
Right? Right? I mean, that would be 100 of them. I think even that, like, since they bundled it with the guide, so then it ended up being like $80 instead of 60, or stuff like that. But
See, our plan for the NES version, it was very similar to what you got with Final Fantasy, in that it was going to have a guidebook in it that was the maximum number of pages we could, which is 84. That was, they figured that with the thickness of the paper, with this, the size of the cartridge, the fact that we were going to have these posters in there, that they could not put another 4-page spread into that thing. Because that was 84 pages was it.
Yeah.
So that's what we worked with. And so yeah, it was going to be the same way as Final Fantasy. We were going to do it a little bit different in that, as we'd gotten some feedback from Final Fantasy, where basically you opened it up and and it took you through the whole game, where we were going to have the first part of it be just the instructions on how to play the game, and then a separate section that was a guidebook. We would have loved to have done 2 pack-in guides.
Yeah.
But that's one of those business decisions when they think about it. Well, if we make 2 different guidebooks and have to have 2 staple, it's going to cost us so many yen.
Yeah. Yeah, logistics.
It's one of those things that as a game player, you don't want to think about. And as a producer, you want to have the best possible thing that you can. But the guys in the suits, they count the beans.
Yep.
Damn it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, if it does go on Virtual Console and you do end up getting a Wii U or something to play it on, and we do, which I'm sure will.
I'm sure somehow I'll hear about it. I don't think it'll go by without my noticing at all.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure that when that glorious day comes, I'd definitely love to call you up again and see, because we have.
Yeah, you got a number for me. You've got my email. You know how to get hold of me.
Yeah.
You figured it out.
Well, yeah, it was definitely great talking to you, and this has been quite the experience.
Well, good.
Yeah. I will let you know when this goes live. I don't know how long it'll take to get the editing and stuff done, but I think we're periodically going to release the videos one per gameplay point.
Okay.
Because at a ground level, it's more like a community playthrough. So one person goes through a section.
I think you explained that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it'll be 1 per thing, but yeah, no, I'll definitely keep you in the loop.
I mean, and you can tell how much that I enjoyed the process of that game, and I could probably continue to talk for hours, and if you had specific questions, because things, memories like that, you need to have something to
jog it.
To jog it.
Yeah.
To what's interesting. Otherwise, it's a monologue, and it's not interesting to anybody else.
Yeah.
But there was, and there are things that I still know about the process of that, and things that are known behind the scenes that I still can't tell you. I could, but
then
somebody would have to kill you.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that or
yeah.
have it arranged. So
no. Yeah. Well, yeah, it was great talking with you, and I'll keep you.
Have a safe trip back to down by Portland. I don't remember.
Yeah.